Namaste, viewers. Welcome to Jaipur Dialogue USA and Jaipur Dialogue. Today, we are going to talk about the upcoming visit of Prime Minister Modi to United States as a state guest, with also he will be addressing the joint session of Congress. There are so many things to be talked about. That's the news, the big news from the Indian perspective. I don't see that news covered in the American media as yet. But it will happen definitely because this is a state visit. To discuss the various ramifications of this visit, I have greatest of pleasure in welcoming two very erudite, very, very measured people who know India. They know India-US relationship. They have been at the forefront of the relationship, equation for a very long time in their own wonderful way. First of all, let me introduce Dr. Bharat Barai. He's a cardiologist. Am I right about that, sir?
I'm an oncologist, hematologist.
I'm oncologist, and he's in the forefront of many initiatives that have happened on behalf of Indo-Americans. And Mr. Rahul Sur, a very quiet man. He has been a former IPS officer, as I was telling, once an IPS, always an IPS. So he was the Director General of Maharashtra. Am I right about that, Rahulji?
Inspector General, actually, not
Inspector General. So Inspector General of Police in Maharashtra. And he has been with United Nations for a while. He has now sought voluntary retirement, and he's very well aware of the ramifications of geopolitics, the way it gets conducted. So let me start the conversation with Rahulji, actually. Bharatji, I'm starting with Rahulji with one very important factor that the world must recognize, that these are very aspirational elements of the geopolitical part of the US government. When they invite a state leader as their chief guest, state welcome, joint address, the whole 99 years of shebang that goes on. But this is not the first one. India has had the privilege of having two more state invites like this. Explain to the audience, from Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan downwards, what is the significance of this one? Or does it really matter at the ground level of geopolitics?
Thank you very much. First of all, namaste to you, to your viewers, and to Dr. Bharat Barai. I'm honored to join here. With respect to the state visit, it is, of course, a singular honor because there are various types of visits, of which the state visit is the highest, which comes with a 21-gun salute and a white tie dinner. And obviously, that means one country is completely pouring its diplomatic apparatus in honoring the leader of another country. Now, for us, interestingly, this is not although Mr. Modi is going to be addressing the Congress for the second time, and he's the first leader to have done so. We had Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, who was there, I think, in 2009. But very interestingly, the first state visit of an Indian leader to the United States was by our wonderful first president, Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. And that took place in June 1963. It was indeed another world. President John F. Kennedy was the president. The World Trade Center had not been built. And what I read was that there had been 38 days of drought in Washington, D.C., and apparently the president, Radhakrishnan, came and broke that spell. And his itinerary in the United States was very interesting, in addition to the usual stops one has, Arlington Memorial, the Washington Press Corps. He went to Colorado to have a look at, water management. He watched the launch of a research rocket. He even went to Disney World, and he watched the shooting of a movie. Interestingly, now that Prime Minister Modi is coming to New York also, and to the United Nations, it's interesting to note that President Radhakrishnan also went to the United Nations, also gave a speech out there, which was praised as, precise, rational, and highly focused. And on the last day of his visit, the band played Mozart's The Magic Flute, which apparently symbolizes man's victory over the forces of evil. So that was not the first prime minister, but the first president. And consequently, even at that time, there was a shared relationship between India and America in terms of the values. They spoke of the language of democracy, open societies, which continues to today. But in essence, what a state visit means is the highest honor accorded by a country to the leader of another country. That means it is a red carpet thrown all over in all its apparatus, military, political, cultural. So it is really the acme of achievement, and we are on the cusp of a new visit, which has got many facets to that, Vibhuti.
Thank you very much for the historical perspective you gave to this visit. And this is very important for everybody to understand that this is a special relationship being mooted, being touted, and being talked about. Bharatji, you have been in the forefront of Indo-American relationships. You have been in the forefront of doing so many things to facilitate Indo-US relationships. I wanted to have your thoughts on this with the background, because everything is relation to the foreground and the background. The background is that even Ernst & Young reported that China is losing to India and Japan, given the strained relationship that they have with America right now. So, given that background, the economic cooperation, defense cooperation, people to people cooperation, how do you find this particular visit having a clear impact of Modi on the United States government? And is it how do you see this relationship transform? Because just to make a quick mention, India's US relationship has been moving along very well, but also sputtering from time to time. We have been called natural allies, a strategic relationship. Now the new word is a consequential relationship. How do you see this evolve in this visit? How do you see this change the perspective of Indo-US relationship?
Vibhuti, if I put it, and going by the background, from 1947 till maybe 1962, we were more sort of a Russian ally, even though we called ourselves non-aligned. In 1962, after the Chinese invaded northern part of India, President Kennedy sent arms shipments to India. So the relationship warmed up a little bit at that point, but it was really not a material change because the Nehruvian policy was still tilted towards the Soviet Union. Now, granted that at that time Soviet Union had been favorable to India in the Security Council. They had voted. They also became one of our biggest or almost exclusive arms supplier. So there was a reason for friendship between the two countries, and that friendship should continue. But we were very hostile to the Western democracies, even though we were democracy ourselves. And that relationship kind of stayed cool or sort of semi-frozen because at time of liberation of Bangladesh, President Nixon tried to threaten India, and even Indira Gandhi was not very friendly. I think it was Prime Minister Rao. He started becoming a little bit more warm towards United States. And then Prime Minister Vajpayee took it over, and he used the phrase, United States and India are natural allies. So that's when it started warming up. Even during Dr. Manmohan Singh, it warmed up a little bit. But in my opinion, on a scale of 0 to 10, the relationship was more like 3 to over 10. Now, Prime Minister Modi recognized the strategic significance both for the interest of United States and interest of India, that if this relationship was brought closer, it would benefit both the countries immensely. And that process has been catalyzed by the Indian Americans. Since 1960s, the population of Indian Americans in USA has been steadily growing up. And if you count students and H-1B visa holders, we are almost 4.6% of, sorry, 4.6 million, or about 1.5% of US population. Not only that, the Indian Americans are more educated, they have higher level of income, they are more active in participation of US public life. So you have a prime minister who has recognized the significance and how to use that relationship on the economic side. So India has a greater trade relationship, and with the era of high tech, and Indian Americans again are leaders in high tech industry. Silicon Valley has lots of Indian Americans, both working there as well as incubators and owners. So, in trying to transform India into what we call digital India, Narendra Modi took a great initiative. He's probably one of the most high tech educated or follower among the prime ministers. Second thing, we have two bad neighbors, Pakistan and China. And especially China has become strong economically and also become strong militarily. And in spite of Narendra Modi trying to keep good relationship, invited President Xi to Gujarat, treated him royally, invited him to Mahabalipuram, treated him royally, and yet the ungrateful Chinese, instead of trying to reciprocate the friendship, they tried to stab back India like they did in 1962. But this time they found that the Indian armed forces and the Indian political leadership are a lot stronger. So in Ladakh, it has become a sort of standoff type of situation, except that we lost 20 of our brave soldiers in the fight. And they are also trying to create now problem in Arunachal Pradesh, trying to invent names and territories which they don't belong to. So while India is building up its defense forces and its capabilities to the high tech level, we needed somebody who can stand with us, provide us accurate and highly sophisticated intelligence, provide us high tech arms, and stand with us on the world level. So if the Western countries are standing with India, then it becomes a lot more advantageous to India for its own freedom, for its own survival, for its own economy. And on the other hand, for the United States, the benefit is once you go east of Europe, Middle East is always in turmoil. Pakistan and Afghanistan, of course, are hardcore Islamist countries. And if you go further east of India, most of the countries are small. Thailand, I'm not counting even Myanmar, because Myanmar is a dictatorship by itself and can't contribute anywhere. But other countries of Southeast Asia, they are small countries. Then you go further up, Japan on its own cannot stand up to China. Taiwan maybe or may not be able to stand up to China. So also Philippines, so also Indonesia. So United States recognizes the strategic importance of India, that if you want to have freedom in Asia, if you want to have freedom of navigation in the Pacific, who can stand up to the Chinese bullies? And that is India. So I think it has become advantageous to both the countries that it is a symbiotic relationship. Plus, we have a common language, English. I remember Siddharth Shankar Ray told me once when he was ambassador of India to US, he said, Bharat, when I presented my credentials to President George Bush, the senior, he said, Mr. President, I represent the largest English-speaking country in the world. That's how he introduced himself. So we are highly educated, Indians in India and Indians in USA. We have high-tech expertise, especially in software. United States needs high tech, and Indian Americans have contributed a lot to the growth of high tech industry in Silicon Valley. We have highly educated medical professionals, which constitute almost now first and second generation, 8 to 10% of US medical professions. We have a lot of good engineers in other fields. We have now hotel motel owners. We have small businessmen. So there is a good integration of relationship in different fields between the two countries. And Narendra Modi has recognized that, and he is actively pushing for relationship between the two countries. I mean, think of it. Our bases in India are now open to US, Australia, Japan for docking, even to France. You could not think of it 30 years ago. We have intelligence sharing. FBI has office in India. So I think it's a good mutually beneficial relationship, and this prime minister deserves a lot of credit for turbocharging the process.
Bharatji, you gave significant focus on the Indo-Americans here, and of which all three of us are part of. In India, we are known as not required Indians, as if we left the country in disgrace or whatever. But I belong to the category of people who say that every Indian needs to become an NRI. And my definition of NRI is new responsible Indians. New responsible Indians.
There are some people curse as not reliable Indians, not
yes, whatever.
But
my phrase is new responsible Indians. And we have established, you very correctly said, we have established ourselves in the American community very well. But it brings me to a point, and I will seek Rahulji's intervention in this and his comment on this, that, you also alluded to the fact that Prime Minister is relying upon the diaspora support. The whole chanting of Modi, Modi started in Madison Square Garden here in 2014, and which continues till Australia visit, right? It continues on regardless of that. So Rahulji, my inquiry would be with you. And then we have another thing, that how Rahul Gandhi was speaking in this country against India, against Modi. In that background, considering the fact that he has a very overwhelming support of Indians living in this part of the world, what must Modi do? Ask United States government not to weaken the Indian diaspora, but to strengthen their entire relationship. Because, I was told recently that the statement from the White House was that leaders will discuss ways to expand people-to-people ties. So Prime Minister Modi knows the support that he gets from NRIs. What must he demand on our behalf that the US government, particularly the Democratic Party government, must do and must not do to create a dispirited stance in us, or make us belligerent and continue to enjoy the collaboration with Dr. Barai talked about technology, medicine, banking, finance, the whole 99 yards. We have a contribution to make, and we have very proudly done very well for America. Your thought on it?
Right. So, thank you very much, Vibhuti, for the question. In conceptual terms, I classify the India-US relationships into 5 categories. One is government to government. The second is business to business. The third is people to people. The fourth is, culture to culture. And the fifth is what I call the enemies of India within India and the enemies of India within the United States and the alliance between them. Now, in this case, there is no doubt that the Indian Americans, being a highly educated, responsible, law-abiding community, has done very well for itself. And I would say it has had a mixture of, simply, getting absorbed in the American mainstream, yet at the same time maintaining their, distinct, individuality. So till now, it's not that Indian Americans out here have not faced difficulties in the wider milieu. there have been racist attacks on them. They were earlier called dot busters, etc., etc. But now I want to point your attention to the fact that recently there was a PAC established in Washington, D.C., that is Americans for Hindus. In other words, they are recognizing that it is also necessary to have identify yourself Hindu Americans. And in that sense, while we have faced discrimination from the population sometimes in this, I would say, really great country, and I have no hesitation in calling America a really great country. Yet at the same time, one notices with some consternation that now there are elements of state-sponsored discrimination against Hindus. For instance, the bill which they are trying to get and trying to, get inside on the basis of outlawing discrimination on the basis of caste. Now, this, in my opinion, is clearly not the right way to go, because discrimination on religion is already a banned category. And consequently, as the diaspora has stood firmly by the Prime Minister for his wonderful work and for the fact that they recognize that here is a man who pushes merit and recognizes merit, and which was the reason why many NRIs left India to go to an ecosystem which recognizes merit. But now there can be threats to especially to Hindus out here. The term Hindu phobia has been empirically demonstrated to be true. And consequently, focusing on us to say that you are cannot discriminate on the basis of caste. Nobody wants discrimination on the basis of caste. But one can imagine that if you were to apply this principle to other faiths, for instance, Vibhuti ji, it would be a rather anomalous situation. And I think the Prime Minister needs to directly or through his seniors say that Hindu phobia has no place in the United States, because we are an extension of the grand civilizational light of India out here. We will continue to do our best to make this country prosperous, but at the same time, we will not hesitate to defend ourselves, because that is the inherent right. And in that sense, I think he needs to speak that word, and also start a conversation amongst themselves. Well, if it's caste today, are we if you apply this to another faith, does it mean you can say, well, you cannot discriminate against anyone on the basis of him being a quote infidel? So therefore, this is a very problematic legislation, and I think the Hindu community is organizing, is fighting back as they should. But at the same time, I think a word of encouragement from the Prime Minister, given his enormous reserve of goodwill that he carries in the diaspora, which is well deserved, will, I think, give a much needed boost, encouragement, and support to the wonderful, Hindu American community that we have in America.
Thank you very much. It's an important issue because, as Bharatji said, and you also said that, as a senator once told me, that we love you Indians as immigrants to the country. And, because you are professionals, you are hardworking, you are in the highest income bracket, you have family values, you take care of your children, you are not a law and order problem anywhere. Yet, Bharatji, we are constantly being targeted, whether for reasons for Hindutva, whether for reasons of deliberate pushing. Caste is one of the issues, and most of it happens in a democratic run state, including the democratic run municipalities. How does one address that challenge, particularly when you are coming under a democratic administration? What will be Prime Minister's challenge? How does he address that situation? As Rahulji said, that, hey, you want to have Indians, we have capability to contribute, but you have to make sure that we are not abused and we are wrongfully accused of things that we are not. Bharatji.
Vibhuti, that's the battle that we will have to fight. Nobody else for us. There are three sources of this anti-Hindu propaganda. One is so-called Indian American Jihadi Council. I know, I'm sure you understand who. This is a narrow group of people from Hyderabad who are constantly spending the money to target. But I don't think that it has the support of most of the Muslims. It's a small minority of Muslims that are doing this. Number two, some of so-called self-certified intellectuals who work in the academics, though it is changing. I mean, when Rahul Sam Pitroda says we talk to the intellectuals, what do they mean intellectuals? I'm also a professor at Indiana University Medical School. So he considers himself and 8 or 10 people that they talked as intellectuals. There are a lot of intellectuals in the country who believe on the other side, but somehow that they try to project an image that Rahul Gandhi is the only one who talks to the intellectuals, while Narendra Modi, who talks to thousands and thousands of intellectuals, it has no value. So this kind of aura that is being propagated by some people that only Rahul Gandhi and these left-wing radicals, they are the only intellectuals, while other people who are middle of the road, well-balanced people are not intellectuals. We are like, still gamadiyas as we call it, or uneducated villagers. That's the kind of thing that is trying to talk. So the so-called intellectual. But if you really see, last year or year before, when they tried this anti-Hindutva conference, which was sponsored by the left-wing radicals and this Indian American Jihadi Council, how many people registered worldwide? Total 1,200 or something like that. Total, all over world. Out of which, half the people were people like me. We wanted to find out what the heck they were doing. So if on an online platform, you cannot register even 600 people, I think there is a lot more smoke, there is a lot more noise. Yes, there is a little bit of fire, but I think except for the social media buzz, they really don't have much of a reach. Now in US Congress, yes, there are some left wing. One of them used to be one of our own Indian American, but I think she is kind of cooling down a little bit because she found that the financial support that she had received from Indian American community before is not there for her, though there are jihadis that are sponsoring her. She also has a fairly large Somali Muslim constituency, so she is trying to play the vote bank politics too. But most other people have come around, and those that are still anti-India, we as Indian Americans should work with them, try to persuade them. I give you an example. 2 years ago, when there was an anti-India resolution, it went around in several cities. And you know how they tried to hide it? Officially, the resolution was introduced into those assemblies as a consent agenda. Congratulations to India on its 75th birth anniversary. So most of the aldermen, they don't even read it. Oh yeah, somebody's birthday, somebody's wedding anniversary, somebody's anniversary. Okay. If they read it, it was a hard anti-India, anti-Hindu resolution. We read it, we fought it very hard in Chicago, and we won it. So it requires determination on part of the local Hindus and Indian American population to fight it. And after that hard fight and loss in Chicago, they have not gone anywhere else, but we are looking for them. If they do try to find this kind of resolutions introduced somewhere else, we will share our experience, how we fought it off successfully in the city of Chicago. So it's our duty as Indian Americans, as Hindu Americans, and I might share the news with you, Surisab. This Wednesday, just 3 days ago, there was a meeting on the Capitol Hill of Hindu leaders on Capitol Hill. And a Hindu caucus has also been established. So yes, there is a Muslim caucus and Jewish caucus. Now we want to have Hindu caucus in addition to India caucus, because there are some people who are still shy of calling themselves Hindu. They would rather call themselves secular. I'm nothing wrong being secular, but those very people who come and tell me, I said, why are you telling India and pointing out 5 cases or 10 cases in a country of 1.5 billion over a period of 9 years? There are more people being shot on the streets of Chicago or somewhere than ever they have been killed in the last 9 years. And yet, they don't talk about how many Hindus have been murdered in the state of Kashmir. That is exceeds number of Muslims that may have been lynched. Unfortunately, I don't want to say that all the Hindus are saints. There are people who have criminal tendencies, but to blow up million times and show as if India is a country where every day minorities are being lynched and millions are killed and genocide is being committed. On the other hand, when Kashmir, where really genocide happened, and almost 600,000 Hindu Kashmiris were pushed out, they don't want to talk about it. And I tell them, hey, India may be an imperfect secular country, India may be an imperfect democracy. Why don't you first go to those 57 Islamic countries, make them secular, and then come and tell how we make India a perfect secular country and a perfect democracy? So then those guys shut up. Why do they only want India to be the secular country where all the minorities have veto power, so the 85% can't do what they want to do, but the 15% will have the veto power of what 85% can do? So I think we have to argue out our case, Vibhuti ji, and unless you are willing to stand up to those bullies, you are not going to be successful. As I said, it is Hindus will have to contribute to the Hindus' cause. I don't expect the Pope to come and contribute, nor do I expect the King of Saudi Arabia to come and contribute to our cause.
Thank you very much. Bharatji, you stole my certain words which I have been using for a while. I was, at the G20, C20 event in Mahabalipuram a few weeks ago, and the theme was Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And that's the time when I said that we, like what you said exactly, perhaps we echoed the thoughts. I said that we have to become our own pracharak and our own pravaktas.
True.
And as you very correctly said, that unless and until we stand up and demand reciprocity, nobody is going to give it to you. So Surji, Rahul ji, आपके साथ एक बात करूंगा मैं. I wanted to touch upon that. A lot is being talked about, bandied around, the largest democracy, the oldest democracy, the values the two countries share, and the strategic needs. What are the problem issues that Modi and Biden must address? And I also want to talk about here, seek your view, both of your views on this. The two people are different personalities completely. Modi ji is full of energy. The guy has not taken even a day's holiday and makes sense when he talks. He's alive, alert, energized, vegetarian, a Hindu, proud Hindu, linkage with RSS. And you have Biden, who has not once talked about the swamp in DC. By the way, remember that part. I followed that very closely. He's accused of all kinds of corruption charges emanating from him. So, I'm baffled, and I want to curious to know how, when these two people look into eyes with each other, what is the personal chemistry that must work, and how must these two countries find convergence issues more than divergence issues? Because compromise and relationships improve when you find the issues on which you converge rather than insist and fight about the divergences. Your thought. And the same thing I would like to know from Bharatji as well. You go first, Rahulji.
So, in this respect, when Mr. Modi is here, let's not forget that he's going to be interacting with the third American president. He interacted with President Obama, then with President Trump, and now with President Biden. And each one of them thinks that they are special friends with Mr. Modi, which I think is certainly a testimony to Mr. Modi's, interpersonal relationships. Now, in terms of, what brings these countries together, the way I look at this visit is it has got elements of both soft power and hard power. Now, when the Prime Minister is going to be taking part, and I would say leading, on the International Day of Yoga in 21, he is literally symbolizing the acme of India's soft power. That is, he is pitching the quintessentially Hindu practice of yoga as a solution at the individual level where people can find greater, health, peace of mind, but also at the same time, the fact that the president of the General Assembly is going to be joining out there and using the huge symbolism of the United Nations. So therefore, that is the soft power, which is an absolute stroke of political genius, which I hope that future students of leadership will study in depth. Now, in this case, no other political leader right now is drawing upon his religion to give universal solutions. You have presidents who, for instance, in the United States, you have a custom of the US president, giving the first pitch in the opening of the baseball season. Once in a while, President Biden goes for a cycling tour, and unfortunately he falls. You have Rishi Sunak who goes for a run, but here you have Mr. Modi giving the solution of a yoga in the soft power. Now, when it comes to what unites the two countries, the second part of the trip is what I call he immediately pivots to uh, making sure that India has more hard power. Now, if you have a look at what is planned, for instance, the signature on the co-production of the GE 414 engines, the fact that Anthony Blinken has called the commercial relationships the heart of our relationships, because after all, this is a very practical country and loves making money. So, in that sense, what is drawing the two countries closer together is certainly China's stand, increasing assertiveness, which is manifested in, of course, the Quad, and also the fact that many elements in the American power structure have realized that the outshoring of American production to China was a pretty bad idea. So that incentive on the part of America to cooperate with India as a manufacturing country is certainly strong. And the impulsion which China's rise has given to America's closeness with India is not going to disappear. Now, from India's side, obviously, we need their technology, but at the same time, we are also offering things to them by placing huge orders of Boeing's into direct investment by Indian entrepreneurs. So, therefore, it was a trade between the two countries that reached 190 billion, which is almost doubled since 2014. So there are very strong, defense and business reasons which draws these two countries together. And of course, as I said, the hard power, the soft power is the yoga. Now, in terms of the differences between the two leaders, it could not be more striking. And if you look at 4 points of difference between them, one similarity, of course, is that they're both long-serving political leaders. You already alluded to the fact that one is bursting with energy and the other one seems to be slightly deficient in that category. In terms of what has happened to the fate of their families, President Biden's family seems to have the mysterious gods of fortune smiling upon them and enriching themselves over the span of his political career, whereas Mr. Modi's family, as is well known, has remained as inconsequential middle class as before. So therefore, none of the benefits of his political power have infiltrated to his family. Mr. Modi has double the popularity as Mr. Biden does. And one is facing serious allegations of corruption, whereas a squeaky clean record on the part of Mr. Modi. So therefore, there are very, very significant differences in the personalities, the political styles of both the leaders. And in terms of Mr. Modi, the number of things which he brings to his repertoire, his political repertoire, as they call it, is astonishing. And I hope that future generations who study political leadership, or even current generations who study the astonishing breadth of things which he does, in his leadership, which I do not find that much in President Biden. So he is a man who we should be really proud of. And I think Hinduism's astonishing capacity to produce leaders who are rooted in their religious tradition, but yet at the same time can speak a language of universalism and relevance which I do not find anywhere else.
Thank you. Very well said, sir. Bharatji, your thoughts on that?
Prime Minister Modi, with his roots, his thinking, and his ideology, is committed to excellence for India and people of India. Think of it, Vibhuti. For 65 years since independence, why didn't any Indian leader thought that people needed toilets in their homes? Why didn't any Indian leader thought that they needed a water to come to their home with pipe water? Why didn't Indian leader think that there should be cooking facilities and the women should not have to burn either chana or wooden thing to cook the food? Why didn't they think that electricity was needed in every home or everybody needed at least a small home? Why did it take 65 years to realize very basic thing like this? And here is a man who lived in a single room house when he was growing up, kacha house. He thought about it. So if you look at it, look at the vision that for every common man, yes, he was not born with a golden spoon. He doesn't own a farmhouse. He doesn't go around with the dog. He doesn't put on $500 Italian clothes. But he thinks about the common man, what common man needs. Today, the goal is most of the Indians will have electricity in their houses. Almost 85% people already have piped water, and the goal is to get it all by 2025. So, toilets. He started the project, and today, I don't know the exact number, but almost 140 million toilets have been built in addition to those who already had. So the vision that he carries for his country, other people are able to see, both people of India, that he cares for bringing up the living standard. Now, going beyond the basic necessities, who gives job to the people? Where does the prosperity of United States come? And this is where I want to bring up. Rahul Gandhi comes here. Yes, he talks to people of one religion, collecting them. Why doesn't he learn from United States? Why has United States come up economically? Private industry, individual initiative, and constantly trying to abuse Ambani and Adani. Wait a minute, Ambani and Adani and many other industrialized him, whether it is Tatas or Birlas or Chaurasias, they have brought thousands and millions of jobs to the Indians. Instead of giving 1,500 rupees, okay, everybody in Karnataka will get 1,500 rupees. What do you do with 1,500 rupees? I would rather give them a job that gives them 20,000 rupees per month so they can support their family, educate their children, have their own house, maybe have their own vehicle. So this whole nonsense in terms of Garibi Hatao and give 1,500 rupees, the concentration that Narendra Bhai is putting is how to prosper India economically so that every family comes from lower class to the middle class. It's already happening as a process, but that is where his concentration is. And now India has become the fifth largest economy in the world. Rest of the world respects you if you are strong, if you are clean and honest, if you work for your own people, and you enjoy the support of your own people and be reasonable. And what happened at Madison Square Garden, till then Modi was a kind of little unknown entity for most of the American leadership. But when he received such a rousing reception, if I quote words of both John Kerry as well as President Obama, Mr. Prime Minister, we could not match the rock star reception that you received at Madison Square Garden. Those are their words. So he enjoys a lot of popularity and respect from the Western leaders for what he has done in spite of being abused by some left-wing extremists and religious extremists in India as well as abroad. Now, talking about Biden, I know President Biden a little more than many people. He has served on the Foreign Relations Committee for a number of years as senators. And I tell you, in 2008, I was part of the Nuclear 15 so called, who had campaigned heavily for the nuclear treaty. And I had gone to meet him, a delegation from Chicago, and his campaign manager for presidential campaign, who happened to be from Chicago, had arranged the meeting. And I met him in his chamber in Senate. At that time, Prime Minister Singh was concerned that there was not a single Democratic co-sponsor in the Senate for the resolution. And he sent Murli Devra, who I knew. So Murli Devra came and says, Bharat Bhai, Prime Minister is very concerned and we have to do something so it looks like bipartisan support. And Prime Minister has sent me. So we met our senator, my Indiana senator, Senator Evan Bai, who happened to be a personal friend. But since there was not a single Democratic senator, he said, yeah, I would like to be, but I wish you to at least line up 2, 3 other people and I will join. So when we met Senator Biden at the time, we explained to him. And you know what he said? He said, Doctor, I'm going to be the first Democratic senator to join as a co-sponsor for this nuclear bill. Not for anything else, but I see the relationship between the two countries, not now, not 5 years down the line. I look at it 20, 25 years down the line. So he has served in the Senate. He knows the world scenario very well, more than many other senators and some of the congressmen. So I think he's very pragmatic. Yes, Democratic Party has some left wingers, but even on the Republican side, there are extreme right wingers too. So both parties have their extreme membership. But I think Biden recognizes the value of being a pragmatist and try to stitch up what is good for the United States. So he realized the value of Prime Minister Modi, how it is strategic for both India and USA, as well as for world, and standing up against the world bully, China.
Thank you very much for bringing the insights on things that happen. And I tell you one thing, apart from his old age now, whatever that, putting that aside, when he was a presidential candidate in 2008, I think, when Mr. Obama won, he has the capacity to endear himself to anyone. And as you very rightly said, he is, what is called, he knows the ropes of the entire Washington, D.C., politics and, relationships. So, I hope he's able to align himself and understand, and he continues to understand and not get vitiated by the constant attack on by the very group of people who sometimes become a hardcore people, like you said about the Andhra, Islamic group, which is marginal. But there's a very interesting theory that we have in our management work, as we say, extremes drive the middle. And that's why you have to always take care of those extremities, because you have no idea when it catapults into a big deal. Rahulji, coming to you on this subject matter, and really wonderful insight, Bharatji. It is wonderful to hear your insights because you have been deeply involved. If you were, you have been, you have been in the United Nations, you have been in the government. If Prime Minister Modi chose you to do his speech writing for the US Congress address, what top 2 things that he must talk about and what he must avoid mentioning at all? The trap, the booby trap.
Well,
What will be your
I
suggestion to him?
when he stands out there giving his speech, we know that he's going to have a favorable audience. If you have a look at his first speech, which he gave, I think it was in 2016, when he came inside, he was greeted by a round of applause, which lasted for 3 minutes. And consequently, it has been called, the India-US relationship has been called one of the rare bipartisan successes of the 21st century by American commentators. So therefore, they are both united. Now, there is really a lot which drives the countries together. And if you see the wonderful 20-minute commentary on when President Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, came, again, it was the same thing, that we have the shared values of an open society, of democracy, those are really solid fundamentals because there's so much we agree on. And President Radhakrishnan at that time, he said we've got the support and sympathy for the Indian struggle for freedom. So obviously, if I was his speechwriter, this has to be alluded to as they like to say India is the largest democracy and the US is the oldest. But Prime Minister Modi, in fact, says that we are the oldest democracy given the depth of our consultative traditions in ancient Indian history. Uh, I think he should span, both the soft power and the hard power of it. America is a pragmatic country, and consequently, talking about business, uh, his signature initiative of Make in India, and that is to displace China as the manufacturing destination of the world in a regime which follows the laws, and as Dr. Rich McCormick said, which follows the WTO laws as opposed to China. He should certainly, touch upon that. He should touch upon the contributions of the Indian Americans, the enormous contribution they have made in the leadership and now even in the World Bank. So all these things are there. Uh, Obviously, points of difference are going to remain. For instance, the issue of the broader issue of the reform of the Security Council remains deadlocked. And let's not forget that India is trying for a seat in the Security Council, and Russia has the veto out there. So consequently, there should be no attempt uh, to simply put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. The fact that we have got mutual synergies with America does not mean that we cannot have a good relationship with Russia. Uh, at the same time, the Prime Minister, I don't know whether they're going to be talking security, but at the same time, both the sides recognize the threat of terrorism, and we still have the mastermind of the 1993 bombings in Bombay at large. There can be scope for ramping up cooperation in that, and there can be scope for the greater protection of the Indian diaspora out here. It is not something which has not been done by Indian leaders before. For instance, when there were attacks on Indians in Australia uh, and other places, Indian leaders have spoken about it. So what Dr. Barai said, that we have to fight this battle on caste alone. Yes, that is true. We have to fight it out here. But at the same time, India has a civilizational footprint of Hinduism, which it must not shy away from claiming. So in that sense, uh, to say that we, as a Prime Minister of India, am aware and I encourage the Indian diaspora, not that they need my encouragement, to continue to work for the shared prosperity and democracy of America, and India will be welcome. But at the same time, we would not like them to face any unjustified state-sponsored, discrimination, as seems to be the case right now, especially in democratic administrations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bharatji, you know Narendra Modi ji very well. You know Biden very well. You know both sides of the aisle very well. So, how do we find, if you were his speech advisor and you prepared his speech, what are the top two items that you feel Prime Minister must address in his speech, knowing both sides as well as you do?
Topic number one, he should refresh the memories of the congressmen and sitting senators. What are the areas of strong agreement between the two countries? We are democracy, we are pluralistic country, we have a rule of law, we respect human rights. Then the bond between us in many other fields, he should refresh their memories. Yes, there may be 2 to 5% of the things on which we disagree, but that's the nature of free people, that they don't agree on everything. So reminding them that yes, we have 95% of the things in common. And then number two, he should highlight what India is looking forward to and why. So spelling, ultimately, all the bills are passed by the Congress and Senate. So, for example, high-tech military intelligence sharing, high technology, that has been an issue on which the Indian Americans are working to get it through the Congress. It requires authorization. So no matter how much the president may want, unless the legislators approve it. So when a couple of times we were discussing, I had mentioned that it is very important for you and the Indian administration to also have good working relationship with members of Congress and Senate, the leadership, because presidents come and go. Their maximum term is 8 years. But there are many congressmen that are there for 30 years. There are many senators there for 30, 40 years. So they are there more stable. And if those influential congressmen and senators understand, they can help push it through the chambers. And it should be a bipartisan thing. So we have to be working with both Democrats as well as Republicans. Again, as I said, there is a fringe minority. As we say, the standard bell-shaped curve, there are 5% on this extreme, there are 5% on the other extreme. So we just have to leave them aside and work with the 40% on the Democratic side, 40% on the Republican side, and make it the 80% of the Congress, and they will go along with you once there is a good rationale and they understand. So I think I'll encourage him to cozy up more and more relationship with the leadership in Congress and Senate of both the parties.
Thank you very much. It has been a fascinating conversation for me. I mean, beating aside the media hoopla, we talked about substantive issues, and I'm very grateful to both of you for coming today and talking with us. So, last question. 2024, both countries going for election. Who benefits from this visit? Biden or Modi? 30-second answer from Rahulji and 30-second answer for you. Rahulji, you go ahead
Well,
first.
well, you see, public memory is short, but at the same time, the Prime Minister has built up an incredible record of achievements. And consequently, this has to benefit him, especially because, there's hard agreements which are going to be signed, on defense, on commerce. And therefore, there is a deepening of, benefits which both sides are receiving from this, outreach which the Prime Minister has done. So I would say that he should, he can, and he definitely will get the benefit of this, uh, in the Indian elections. Now, in the American elections, there is a whole lot of other dynamics which are at work, which can tend to override this and make it into a side issue, because America right now is a nation which is quite divided, and many other issues are occupying the nation. So I don't know whether this visit of President Biden is going to be of any help to him, actually.
Thank you. Bharatji.
I largely agree with him. Even about India, the educated electorate or middle class electorate will certainly see how A. Modi ji is respected by diaspora, how he is respected even by US leadership, and how he is bringing so much material benefits for India, both economic as well as military. So to a degree, it will help. But I was reading today morning, Akhilesh Yadav, we are going to defeat BJP. How? By combining the Dalit, the Muslims, the backward class. There is no talk about what is good for people of India. All it is Dalit, Muslim, that card, constantly playing the caste card. On one side, the same left wingers are trying to bring the caste legislation in India to embarrass the Hindus when there is no caste system in USA. And I don't understand why in the world they are trying to bring caste issue in California. Who is practicing caste? Nobody has asked me my caste for last 48 years that I've been in USA. So what the heck they are trying to do this caste business? And yet, the very same people are openly call themselves secular. Can you believe it? Talking openly that Muslim vote should come to Akhilesh's party, Samajwadi Party. Wait a minute. Why are you talking about secularism when you are openly talking about it? Congress party. Who did they have alliance in Kerala with? Muslim League. How can you have, they abuse the Hindus. If you talk about RSS, BJP, Hindu Mahasabha, that's a no-no word. And yet, the very same party aligns with them. In Telangana, who is the home minister of KCR? Not a secular guy who openly is a member of the Muslim party. So the whole definition of secularism has been turned around, and Indian politicians, especially on the other side, are using the card to try to defeat. So it's possible, of course, Modi ji, because large number of people recognize him, it's based on his policy, it's based on his track record, what he has done. I'm confident that people of India will elect him. Maybe it will add some flavor and some votes as a result of the respect that he gets and the material benefit he brings. But I'm afraid that a hardcore section of people who are only banking on caste, only banking on religion, will still try to subvert the democratic process. But they will not succeed.
Well, they will not succeed. Vijay Bhava to Modi ji and to all of us. Thank you very much, viewers, for watching our show today. Please like, subscribe, share our channel, support us, because we bring you people like Bharat ji and Rahul Sur to talk about issues that you don't hear other places. So with those words, thank you very much for joining. And I just wanted to make one thing clear. There will be lots of deals signed, defense-related, business-related. You have heard about the Micron signing proposing to do 3 billion, semiconductor assembly and test units. You have heard about the GE landmark deal for technology transfer for aircraft, and there will be many more. The Gujarati knows how to do business. So, and the business what matters too, the business that matters to the United States. So money matters, money counts. And that's where, with these words, I end the show today. Thank you. I always say, Satyamev Jayate. Thank you, Rahulji, and thank you, Dr. Barai.
Thank you very much, and thank you to your viewers.